"A people ignorant of its past has no future," said the great Mikhail Lomonosov. Beautiful words, but today the words of Monsieur de Drouet seem more relevant. He stated that in the history of any nation, there are plenty of pages that would be magnificent if they were true. In our times, distinguishing truth from ideologically convenient lies is challenging. While we can't figure everything out, we can provide examples and describe historians' favored tactics. The idea of beneficial historical falsification isn't new. A prime example is the donation of Constantine in the 8th century, where church officials led by the Pope fabricated a document with the Frankish ruler Pepin the Short. It claimed that 500 years earlier, Emperor Constantine the Great transferred authority over the entire western part of the Roman Empire to the Pope. Outraged, church officials demanded power and a unique status from existing states. It took centuries to expose this fake document, but it had already caused much bloodshed. Speaking of bloodshed, what comes to mind when you think of Ivan the Terrible? His image as a bloody tyrant came much later. There's a simple rule: if something happens, look for who benefits. In Ivan's case, it was beneficial to the same Roman Church which had plans for his country. According to the golden rule of hype, future rulers also found it convenient to create the illusion that their predecessor was a tyrant. Yet statistically, Ivan wasn't the bloodiest politician of his time, especially in the 16th century. The Inquisition burned people en masse, and European monarchies committed atrocities that Ivan couldn't have imagined. For instance, on the night of August 24, 1572, French Catholics decided to commit genocide against the Huguenots, known as the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, taking 30,000 lives. The instigator was the mother of the then King Charles IX, who took part in the process. Comparing this to Ivan's rule, he seems almost harmless, but that doesn't negate his tyranny. At that time, such actions were the norm worldwide. Much later, Peter the Great executed 1,182 people in one morning and killed more people than Ivan the Terrible. But Ivan remains labeled as a mad tyrant in history. Tales of him killing 700,000 residents of Novgorod are believed only by the delusional, as the city's population then didn't exceed 30,000. The story with his son isn't clear either. Scientists exhumed his tomb and found no blood traces, only plenty of mercury. It's unclear who did this, but Ivan the Terrible was a cruel but typical representative of his time. The rest was conveniently presented to the public. When it comes to Napoleon, the short master of not only the army but also espionage, his famous defeat of the Allied army at Austerlitz, after which he became the ruler of Europe, is known as a tactical genius. However, few historians recall another fact. Shortly before the battle against the combined Russian-Austrian army, a significant part of the latter was deceived. The Austrian commander Karl Mack, retreating from Napoleon with a 32,000-strong army, was near the town of Ulm. Faced with whether to fortify and rest his troops or continue retreating and unite with the Russians, intelligence reported that a rebellion was brewing in Paris, and Napoleon was turning back to suppress it. Mack stayed and was pleased, but it was all a hoax by Karl Schulmeister, the best French spy. The Allies lost a huge part of their army, and Austerlitz became an example of Napoleon's excellent tactics, but no real rout occurred. The main part of the Russian army retreated to strike back later, but history forgets this. The Soviet government's actions could be compiled into a joke book. Photoshop creators might have been inspired by them when writing the program. The tradition of increasing the number of people at favorable rallies and decreasing at unfavorable ones began then. Look at Lenin's speech in Petrograd. The photo gives the impression of 1 million people, but in reality, it's a combination, and there weren't that many people. Stalin wasn't far behind. His photo for the magazine Stalin and the Stakhanovites remains in the annals of memes, with Maxim Gorky cut out crudely and a mountain of repeating workers in the background. The ideological war with photographs didn't end there. People disappeared from them left and right. Look at the Content Commissioner of State Security, Yezhov, strolling with the leader. Later, he was shot and removed from the photographs. Stalin had someone to learn from. Lenin also liked to play with removing Trotsky and Kamenev from his photos. Even the familiar photo of the Soviet flag on the Reichstag is ideologically correct. Firstly, the photo was taken on May 2nd, and by that time there were a dozen flags placed in real battles. Secondly, the photo shows the first soldiers who happened to pass by. And thirdly, in the original, one of them had 2 watches, implying war and killing opponents. Therefore, in the final photo, photo, the second watch was removed. One thing is certain, history must be known because it often repeats itself. The same thing happened with Patriarch Kirill. The expensive watches were removed from his hand, but the latest technologies didn't help make the fake at least as good as in the USSR, as the watches are still visible in the reflection. This theme can be delved into endlessly. Hitler, Stalin, Obama, even the Pope, all are involved in their power. People are neither good nor evil, and history textbooks are always written as it was beneficial to their owners. In our time, finding an unambiguous source is difficult, but it's necessary, at least so as not to create idols for ourselves and not to consider devils those who simply did their job. We are simple workers and numbers on paper that they like to sacrifice and stuff with ideologically correct machinations. Don't forget how convenient it is to tweak history and for whom, and try to think objectively. This is all we can advise you in the modern world.